Hi, I have the great pleasure of being with Joan Averdson today. She is a speech pathologist at Children's Wisconsin and has been quite a figure and role model within SENTAC. So I would like to start off the interview with asking Dr. Averdson to tell us a little bit about herself.
I've been in this business for quite a long time. In fact, I have been a speech pathologist for more than 50 years. And I am still involved with a number of aspects, primarily focusing on feeding and swallowing in infants and children. The first half of my career, I was focused with adults, with neurologically impaired adults. And that was before we really got into feeding and swallowing, even with the focus in adults. So let's just focus on what has happened about the pediatric focuses. I never started out with the goal to be involved in pediatrics, and I certainly never set out to do all that I have done in feeding and swallowing. When I was getting a PhD at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, my research was focused with adults who had aphasia, and it was a divided attention task. And then I got recruited to the Children's Hospital of Buffalo. That was primarily by Dr. Linda Brodsky, who had been a very strong supporter and participant in SENTAC for many years. When I went to Children's Hospital in Buffalo in 1988, one of the first things she said to me was, "Joan, you will become a member of SENTAC." So that very next year, I was a part of SENTAC, and our first paper that was a review of infants and children who had tracheostomy tubes and their feeding issues, just a retrospective review. But that's what really got me involved with SENTAC. So I was at Children's Hospital Buffalo from 1988 until 2002. I had been the president of the New York State Speech Language Hearing Association in 2000. And my obligation in 2001 was as a governmental affairs. So then I was recruited to the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin with Colin Rudolph and a good many other people as well in speech pathology and audiology. But there was our goal was to build an interdisciplinary program from some start. There was already a piece of a feeding team there, but we had really developed a team while we were in Buffalo. And that was where I got a request to write a book. And I do have to tell you that briefly, because I had presented a very brief seminar at the American Speech and Hearing Association in 1989 with using an example of 3 infants with craniofacial anomalies. So the difference in just a simple cleft lip and palate compared to somebody who has major airway problems, compared to someone who has major neurologic problems. And after I got home from that meeting, a couple of weeks later, I received a letter asking me to write a book. And I said, why would anybody ask me to write a book? I have no abilities or no history of anything that would make me think that that would be okay in terms of credentials. So I showed that letter to Linda Brodsky. And I will tell you, those of you who know her, she was very blunt, very open. And she said, "Joan, you can't write a book. Your writing skills aren't strong enough. But we will do this and we will do it together." And of course, it was a major team effort from multiple professionals at the Children's Hospital of Buffalo. And that was where things really got started and have proceeded from there. So when people ask me, how did you get involved in feeding and swallowing? I say by default. One is in a place, one has interest, there are other people who have interests and skills, and you build this team, and it goes from there. And that's kind of the way with my involvement in SENTAC. I went as an initial person, and then I look back, and I was on the program committee by 1991, the liaison chair in 1992. In 1993, the committee on committees. You know, all of those are very short commitments. And then the executive board from 1994 to 1997. And I really never intended to become president. In fact, by the time I was asked to become president, at least let my name be put up for president. I really felt I have an obligation to do this if people have the respect or whatever for me. And so that was what happened. And I was the president in 2008 and the program chair the year following, with the Sylvan Stool Award for, what is that one called? Continued Outstanding Lifetime Contributions, primarily in teaching. That was back in 2001, I believe. So, Cecile, Dr. Suleman, I think that's enough for one.
Dr. Arvidson, thank you so much for sharing your background with us and in how you became the president of SENTAC. I'm really curious. You are such an amazing leader and role model. You have traveled the world, given conferences, lectures, authored books, and led societies, and also I've had the advantage of seeing you one-on-one with patients. And despite all of your recognition you receive, you always have remained humble with the families. And my question for you is that as a female leader yourself, share if you've had challenges in your career or any advice that you would have for other women leaders.
That's a difficult question to answer, but let me take a stab at it. And I think there are a lot of variables as well. Given that I am in a profession that is heavily women dominated, and that's not necessarily the way one would prefer to have it, but that's the way it is. I think the challenges that I have faced and continue to face are somewhat different from those of you who are surgeons, physicians in the areas of medicine, although many more women, I believe now there more medical schools have more than 50% women, which was certainly not the case 25 years ago or however many, but especially those of you who are surgeons. And I believe, and some of you may well dispute me on this and we could have a discussion, that the women surgeons have to be twice as good as the male surgeons because of the whole path in which you travel. So enough said on that. But I believe that when we can always be open for challenges and knowing that the only constant in our lives, whether it's personal or professional, has to do with change. So we have to be open for change. And that means always asking questions about how can I do what I'm doing today even better tomorrow? Not that things are right or wrong, or even good or bad, but how can I take what I know, what I am doing, and I am a clinician, so in my patient care particularly, to keep asking. And some of you may know I have two favorite four-letter words in English. I say in English because four-letter words have different connotations in different languages. But those two words are what else? And I'm always asking, what else do I need to think about? What else might be going on? What else might be underlying this problem? And as long as we keep asking what else, then we are constantly open for learning. And that's the way we make changes. And sometimes we make changes and we don't even really realize the impact that we have on other people. And we may never know for certain people. And then there are others, and these are folks around the world as well, that it might be years later and somebody will say to me, Joan, you may never realize, but you are the reason that I'm in this profession, or you are the reason that I am doing whatever it is. So that's the way we live our lives. Today is what I have, and how can I make it even better for tomorrow?
Dr. Arvidson, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing with us what your involvement with SENTAC meant to you. I know what it's meant for the rest of us, but what it meant to you, and also why you think that someone should join and be a SENTAC member.
To me, one of the most important aspects of SENTAC, and it is my favorite meeting, even if I don't get there every single year nowadays. I believe particularly because it is so multidisciplinary, and that for those plenary sessions, when most of the papers are presented, the panel discussions, everybody is in the same room at the same time. So, except for the lunchtime special sessions, and those are really important to me as well. So it's this diverse combination of types of sessions, and from the residents' research projects, it may be a single case study, it may involve more than that, but to see these young people presenting their papers and to see the cross-section that we have. Although I will say I would certainly like to see more speech pathologists involved, more audiologists involved, although I think probably more audiologists and speech pathologists, and get some of the other related professions as well, so that we would have even more pediatricians, even more neonatologists, even more gastroenterologists, because all of these systems interrelate. And that's where, regardless of whether our focus is on aerodigestive, we have to look at the feeding and the nutrition and the overall health status. And it all starts and ends with the brain. So everything is neurologically based as well. So the fact that we get together as multiple professionals and with enough opportunities to meet people, coffee break times, poster sessions, and across the age spectrum too. Because when I was a lot younger, then I was able to meet some of the people who have been the people who started this organization, Sylvan Stool, Bob Rubin, and others. And now as I've gotten older, then I try to really pay attention to the young people who come, because that whole cross-section, intergenerational, interprofessional, and the whole way that the meetings are set up, I think are just really, really meaningful to people.
So Dr. Averdson, thank you for sharing so much with us today. Now, I would just like to leave it open to you to discuss anything that you wish.
Let's think about possibilities for the future. This whole year, as the pandemic is forcing us, or maybe I should say allowing us, to really think in ways for communication, for teaching, for doing our research, for sharing our research, our patient considerations when we can't meet up in person like we have all been so used to doing. I mean, I've been making 3 or 4 international trips a year, and probably 6 or 8 US, Canada, Mexico for teaching, sometimes just for a part of a major meeting, sometimes a whole 2-day seminar, but I haven't been able to do that this year. And so when I think about the challenges that we have, how do we keep our communications, our relationships, and build our relationships when I've really spent most of this past year seeing patients at Children's with an N95 mask and goggles, or at my own condo working at my computer. And then since I had a total knee replacement and was having to really work through the wait time again because of a pandemic, and then surgery and therapy. So for all of us, I think that it's really important that we keep ourselves open for how can we make modifications and make things happen perhaps even better. I will confess that I have thought with a time or two that I have done a 2-day session on my laptop through Zoom, looking at my walls, but knowing that there are 100 people out there from all over the world or wherever. And then I think, wow, but we are reaching each other. We are giving an opportunity for interaction with questions and comments as well. So maybe we can reach people in some ways that we never would have otherwise if we would depend on in-person meetings. Now, I certainly hope we don't lose our in-person meetings forever, because I would like to be able to see somebody in person and be close enough to maybe shake a hand or maybe give a hug in person, even as we are professionals, but we are human beings. And the opportunities to share what we know, what we experience, and how we can keep helping those infants and children in all the ways that we focus, especially with a group like SENTAC. I feel very privileged to have had these years of sharing with many folks in SENTAC. And I intend to keep going, at least for as long as I can. And I think that's a good place to stop. I'm wishing everybody the very best possible for health and well-being. Stay safe. Thank you.